Thank you to the Spotlight team for inviting me to speak today. Over the next 20 to 25 minutes, I'm going to explore the power of emotional intelligence. For many of us, the last 6 months have been quite an emotional roller coaster of a time. Many of you working in the spa industry, either as an operator or a supplier to the sector, I imagine it's been quite a tough time, and you've probably been operating in difficult circumstances with fairly thin resources, or you may have even been furloughed. So I think I recognise how tough it's been over the last 6 months, and let's hope as we go into the new year and through into the spring that some sort of normality will come back to the world. I'm a computer scientist by training, but I'm an operator, a leisure operator by trade. I sold my business about 5 years ago, and since then I've been acting as a consultant, a business consultant and executive coach for the last 5 years. And ultimately what I'm about as a person is supporting people. And my passion in business is supporting business leaders to try and help them fulfill and unlock the potential that exists within their businesses. I'm just going to dwell on a short story. It's a little bit self-indulgent because I talk about myself and my relationship with my mother. Now, if I just turn the clock back almost 50 years to 1971, I just want to tell you this story, which shows you the power of an emotional intelligence, which I think my mum had, and she understood me as her son, clearly. Back in 1971, I was 10 years of age, and I was quite good at most sports, to be fair, but I was showing some potential to potentially be a good swimmer. So my mum arranged for me to have a trial at the local swimming club, and that swimming club was called Romford Swimming Club. That's where I was brought up. And the pool was actually about a mile away from home. So I remember the day well. We walked to the pool, and it was still a bit of snow on the ground. It was early March, but I do remember it well. We walked to the pool, and it was Morney Road Bars, and it was an old-fashioned swimming pool that was built at the turn of the 20th century. And it was basically, you had lockers, you had cubicles on either side. You had the men changed on the left and the women changed on the right. But it also had a slipper suite as well, because at the turn of the 20th century, a lot of people didn't have bars at home, so they'd go to the local bars for their weekly bath. Well, anyway, I had my trial with the coach, and the fella's name was a guy called Derek Miller, and I thought I did okay in the trial. But after the trial, he turned to my mother and he said, "Well, your son Andrew, he seems like a nice lad, but I really don't think he's going to make it. He hasn't got the talent, so he didn't seem to have the physical attributes to make it as a swimmer." And my mum obviously thought that was a bit odd because I was only 10 years of age. But so she then thought, okay, well, we'll go along to another swimming club and try there. But she did give me that feedback at the time. And it was interesting because she knew what would really motivate me as a child. And actually that stayed with me. She told me what the coach had said. And I was so determined, even as a 10-year-old, to prove that man wrong. And that has stuck with me. We went along to another swimming club, Hornchurch Swimming Club, and that actually was a bit further away. So it presented a few sort of transport problems. And my dad was working, so it wasn't always easy to rely on him to drive us over to Hornchurch. So the long and short of it was that club was probably the best swimming club in Essex, and had a few GB stars in the senior team. And the coach, a guy called Dr. Allardyce, Jim Allardyce, he took me under his wing. And in the early part of my swimming career, he sort of nurtured me, and he could see some talent, and he obviously could see a little bit of potential in me. I then swam and trained for the best part of 10 years. I trained twice a day, before school, after school, and even at times I was training 3 times a day. Well, 10 years on from then, in 1981, I actually managed to swim for Great Britain. And whilst I was never going to be a world star at swimming, I was really proud of myself that I fulfilled my potential as a swimmer. But for me, the moral of the story there that we can apply in business is that if we can really understand what motivates people, if we can show good intelligence, emotional intelligence, and we can understand what their sweet spot is, we can get our people to go on and really, really perform to their best. These days, I'm an aging triathlete, and the good thing about triathlon is you never retire from triathlon. You just move up another age group. But for me, sport has taught me so many things. It's taught me, in essence, to win with humility, but also to lose with grace. And whether I win or lose is to do both with some level of dignity. And I've tried to apply that to my life and to how I work in business. So as each year goes by, we all strive to improve, and I'm certainly trying to improve my how I work and how I relate to people and become more and a more effective business leader. And the more I learn about the power of emotions, hopefully the better I become. I recognize that there's a massive power in emotional connection, and that emotional connection also can create resonance in our team. So as a leader of businesses or a leader of a business, I've not only got a good emotional connection between me and my team, but also within that team. And you create a team that really is resonating, and they can go on and perform to exceptional levels. And whilst it's common sense, it's important to realize that when people feel good, they perform well. And if they're performing well, your business is performing well. So what is emotional connection? What is emotional intelligence? Well, it's that ability to understand in the first instance ourselves and to be able to control our own feelings. And then to understand the feelings of others and then be able to communicate and react in a suitable way to try and bring about the desired effect. I think for many of us in business, we're trained to be very logical, and we're very system-led, and we're very structured. And a lot of the time, we're quite task-orientated. We've got so many tasks in the day that we need to achieve. So unless we tick all the boxes on our tasks or draw a line through it, we're not happy. But I think to be a top leader, we need to tap into our intuitive ability to emotionally connect with our people. Well, there's two components to emotional intelligence. Firstly, it's your personal capability to manage yourself. And secondly, it's your social competence to manage relationships. It starts with our self-awareness, our awareness of what's going on within ourselves. So we need to understand our own emotions, and we need to understand what sparks those emotions, and we need to understand what those emotions are, how they might be impacting other people. Clearly, we need to understand what our strengths are, and to a point, we need to understand where we might have some limits. So maybe where our weaknesses are. And we need to retain our self-confidence and our self-assurance, and we need to show good empathy when we're listening to people. When I'm working one-on-one with my clients, at times I sometimes feel that I want to reply to what they've said, or I want to contradict what they said. I want to express my opinion, but then I have to hold myself back because I realise that I've sparked an emotion in myself, so I have to stand back and go, okay, well, what's going on here? Why do I feel this need to express myself? It's not about me, it's about them. So I stand back and I observe what's going on between the two of us, and then step back in again. And I try and bring my best self to that sort of interaction. I try and be a little bit more intrigued and interested in what they're saying and where they're coming from. And in essence, I know as a sportsman, I'm competitive, but I need to park my ego at times and need to show a little bit more, humility. In managing myself, I think we could all slow down a little bit so that we're controlling those impulses, because sometimes our emotions can be quite disruptive, and we need to be a little bit more present and engaged. clearly we always need to display our honesty and authenticity and to demonstrating integrity. And we need to be adaptable, and we need to be optimistic as best we can for most of the time. Again, I think you'll hear stories you'll hear sports people saying, "Oh, we take it one game at a time." So they very much focus on being in the moment and believing in their process. So they're not thinking about winning the league; they're thinking about winning the next game and accumulating those points. And if they believe in their process, then they will perhaps achieve the longer term target. And you hear that with athletes as well. Athletes who may be training for next year's Olympics, they're just focusing on one training session at a time, and then believing in the process and knowing that if they do everything that's according to the plan, they have a great chance of fulfilling their potential when they come through to the next Olympics in next summer. And in my sport of triathlon, it's obviously there's three disciplines. There's swimming, there's the bike, and then there's the run. And again, this is a good example of staying in the moment and being present. So if I'm on the swim, and as a swimmer, I'm normally quite comfortable and quite relaxed and quite confident in the water. And most of the time when I'm up against my own age group, I'm trying to put as much distance behind me as possible, because there's usually some good cyclists and runners in my wave. So I'm focusing on the swim. But as I come out of the swim, I then keep my focus, and I know I'm in a rush, but I then start to unzip my wetsuit. I take off my hat and goggles. I pull down my wetsuit to my waist. I run up through into the transition area where my bike is racked. I then rip down my wetsuit. Hopefully I've got my tri-suit on underneath. I rip down my wetsuit. I put on my bike helmet, and I grab my bike, and then I run out of transition. And when I get onto the road, my bike shoes are already attached to my pedals. I jump on my bike, I put my bare feet on top of my shoes, and I cycle away. And once I get going and I'm on a nice straight, almost safe bit, I then slide my feet into my shoes and do up the buckles, and away I go on the bike. But it's all about staying very present and in the moment. So as I'm on the bike, I'm in my aero position, and all I'm focused on is the next 40K. And then for all intents and purposes, I'm just in a bike time trial. And after about an hour, I come back at the end of the 40K, I come back to transition, I take my feet out of my shoes, put them on top of my shoes, I jump off my bike at the dismount line, I run into transition, I rack my bike, I take off my helmet, I put on my running shoes, and I'm out, and I'm on the run. And on the run, I get into a nice rhythm. I'm not dwelling on how tired I am. I'm not thinking about the swim. I'm not thinking about the bike. I'm thinking about the run. I'm in that moment. I'm running along one stride at a time, and then I'll pick off every K until I finish the 10K. Now, I tell you that story because I think we can apply that in business, so that when we are maybe going into a meeting with our team, or we're having a one-to-one session with one of our team, we need to turn off our phones, turn off our computers, and prepare for the meeting, be clear about what we're trying to achieve, and really get into that moment and be very, very present. What do I mean by social? I think it starts with clearly showing empathy. And so we're clearly listening, and we're trying to understand where the other person's coming from, and we're trying to see the world from their perspective. But we're also listening at another level. We're listening at that level to try and facilitate their thinking. So we're thinking about what they're saying and what they're not saying. We're reading their body language. We're almost opening up our brains, our subconscious element of our brain, to really tune in to what they're saying. So we're trying to facilitate their thinking. So we'll use some gentle questions. And what we're trying to do when we're working with people is we're trying to get them to create their own solutions. So we're not trying to give them advice. We're trying to help them find their own way forward. And then in terms of service, we are like servant leaders. So We serve our teams to try and get them to fulfill their potential, but we also work with our line managers, and we understand that it's our job to understand where they're coming from and how we can make their job a bit easier. And if you could imagine a whole organization doing this, how powerful would that be? If we're all working to serve one another to achieve the business objectives. We need to be good communicators, clearly. We need to be persuasive, and we need to try and influence others. We need to be courageous as well. We need to be that catalyst for change. We can't just keep doing the same that we've always done, especially in this changing world. We need to be that catalyst for change. So we need to be courageous. At times, we need to manage conflict, and we need to try and build teamwork through collaboration. But all in all, I think we need to focus on developing our people. In terms of our leadership style, and I use the word leadership rather than management style, our leadership style needs to be adaptable. We need to adapt ourselves to the current situation and circumstances. At times, we might be a leader that has to be command and control, or we may need to take control of the situation. It might be an emergency. We might need to evacuate the building. So we need to take control there. And at other times, we might need to set a pace-setting style of leadership, because there may be a deadline looming, and there might be a special project that we need to bring to fruition. So we need to crack on, and we need to sort of drive people on and lead from the front. But I hesitate to overstate that, because too much of that creates a lot of stress, and stress can lead to poor performance. So we need to be careful how much of that we use. But we certainly, a lot of the time, we need to be looking at creating visions. We might even need to be a bit democratic at times, where we pull people in together and we take on board ideas and we put them in the melting pot, and that might help us create new policies or processes or even new visions. But a lot of the time, we need to focus on coaching our people and giving them one-on-one time. Gone are the days when we do a once-a-year appraisal with people. I think we need to be meeting with people once a week and giving them some quality time to help them fulfill their potential. So let's look into your soul. Who are you? What do you stand for? What are your dominant personality traits? And as a result of your dominant personality traits, what's your default leadership style? And is that appropriate for all circumstances? So look into the future. Who do you need to be, or who do you want to be? And how will you master any new behaviors? Clearly, you can self-assess. You can step back and say, okay, how did I handle that situation? Did I do that well? Did I do that not so well? Could I improve? Would I do it differently if I had a second chance? So you can do a little bit of self-reflection and self-assessment. But also, have you got somebody that you can trust? Maybe a mentor, somebody that can hold a mirror up to you and say, look, this is how you're appearing to the world. So to truly fulfill your potential, I genuinely believe that doing nothing is not an option. The power to improve lies within you. So don't simply be a manager of tasks and things. Be a leader of people, and be a leader that you wish you'd had. This is a great book. It's a sort of book that you can read a chapter at a time. You can put it down, and then you can pick it up again and read that chapter again, and you'll still get something new out of it. So I do recommend it to you. I've produced a handy checklist for things, some points that you can follow, just to help you control your emotions at work. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is, don't be in such a rush. Pause, think, and use silence as well. Don't always think that you've got to give an immediate response, or the pressure's on you to come up with the answer. Thank you for your time and for listening to me. Now I'll hand you back to the Spa Life team and we'll take some questions.